I'm Ryan Green.
And I'm Zack Taylor.
And this is Commander Social.
So this episode, it's going to be a little bit different than our normal episodes. So if you're one of our regular listeners, hopefully you'll stick around for it. But this is for all of you players out there who are new to Commander. And we want this episode to serve as kind of an evergreen introduction to Commander that can be used as a resource continually, not just, for this like 1 week that this episode airs, right? So if you're one of our veteran listeners, you know someone who's wanting to get into Commander, link them to this episode.
This is the episode to point them to. Absolutely.
Yep. So, as we always do, we want to thank the audience. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We couldn't do it without you, and we wouldn't do it without you. So, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And please remember to hit the like button,
the subscribe button,
and hit the ring-a-ding-ding bell for notifications.
Yep. So if you're looking for us on Twitter, where can they find you, Ryan?
I'm at Green Geek.
And I'm at Z4CK38. And together we're at Commander Social.
All right. And we have one more person to thank.
Yep.
That's Mike Condon. He's our silent partner.
Yep.
He helps us with every episode behind the scenes.
Sure
He does all of our audio engineering, and he's a wonderful human being. So
we love him.
Thank you very much, Mike. Absolutely. Thanks. Okay. So we're going to get right on into the main topic here. We're going to tell all of you folks at home, thank you for coming to play Commander, right?
Yep. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah. That's the word I want.
Welcome to the club. It's the best format in Magic. We're a little biased, maybe just a little, but it is the best format in Magic. Like, in my opinion, just hands down. If you're looking just to have fun, this is the most fun you can have in Magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And this episode is for newer players, like we kind of mentioned at the top, but maybe you played a long time ago and you're just now coming back to Magic and you've discovered that Commander is a format because when you stopped playing, it wasn't. We just want to let you know that the community is amazing, and we're going to talk about that a bunch during this episode, but we just want to welcome you back.
Yeah, and I think veteran players will enjoy this too.
Hopefully, just a little bit. Yeah,
absolutely. These are things that when you're talking to new players, you can say, and then send them to this episode, right? But hopefully this will serve as a tool to help welcome new players into our format.
Well, so here's the deal, right? Like, even for established players, like the format survives and thrives and grows as new players come into the format, and we really want to do the community that favor, right? We want to bring more people in.
For sure.
And this episode is a way to do that, right? So, the more people playing Commander, the better. And so we hope that you out there are a new player and that you're watching this. And if you are, please contact us on Twitter and let us know. We would love to help you answer any questions you may have, point you at different resources, and just say hi.
Yep, absolutely. We love talking to listeners. So what is Commander, Ryan?
Well, Commander is arguably the most popular format in Magic the Gathering, and for good reason, because it's really fun.
It is.
All right, so we assume that maybe the people watching are new to Commander, so we're actually going to tell you what it is, and it is a 40 life format, so you start with 40 life instead of the normal 20 in Magic, and it's a 100-card singleton format, which means you can only have one of any card in your deck aside from basic lands, and you pick a legendary creature to be the commander of your deck. The legendary creature starts in the command zone, and you can play it from the command zone. So it's kind of like an 8th card in your hand.
Yeah.
And it starts there every game, and when it dies or gets exiled or whatever, it goes back to the command zone, and then it costs 2 more to bring it into play. So essentially, you can build your deck around the commander. Okay, so the commander actually puts some deck building restrictions, and that's kind of where the magic of this format comes from.
Agreed.
So let's say your commander was Marin of Clan Neltoth.
Marin of Clan Neltoth is 2 black-green for a legendary creature, human shaman, a 3/4 that says, whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand.
All right, so that establishes Marin's color identity as black and green.
Yep.
And so what that means is you can put black cards in your deck, you can put green cards in your deck, you can put green and black cards in your deck, right?
Yep.
So you can also put artifacts as well. But what you can't put into your deck are any cards of another color.
Blue or white or whatever.
And so an example of this would be the card Terminate, right? It's black and a red for an instant that says destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. And that is a black card, but it's also a red card.
Yep.
And since Marin's color identity is just black and green, you would not be allowed to play Terminate.
Right.
Another thing that might be slightly confusing for people coming over from 60 card formats like Standard or Legacy or Vintage is that hybrid mana symbols actually are both. So, for example, there's a card called Kitchen Finks, which is 1 hybrid Selesnya, and it is a 3/2 creature oof. When Kitchen Fink enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and it has Persist. When this creature dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. Now, that has hybrid mana symbols in it, so it is a green and white card.
Correct.
So you could not play Kitchen Finks in Marin Clan of Neltoth, which normally in a 60-card format you absolutely could.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit confusing, but we really wanted to clarify that here.
Yeah, and it's a big deal. It kind of limits it does limit what you can build, but also I've always, believed that limitations breed creativity, and that's what this format's about.
Absolutely. Okay. So what cards are you allowed to play with? Right? Okay. So
Dude, like all of them.
Almost all of them. So many cards. There have been multiple tens of thousands of cards over Magic's history, and you can play with all of them in this format, except for a very few. There is a ban list maintained at mtgcommander.net/rules.php, and you can go there and check out the banned list. I think it's like 39 cards at the time of recording this. So you can play with all of cards in Magic's history except for 39.
I mean, that's pretty good. That's a lot of cards. So, if you played back in the day, all your cards from back in the day, you can play those. Like they're absolutely totally playable.
Yeah, and Commander is a non-rotating format, so those cards are legal now, and they will be in the future as well. There are bannings, but it's very infrequent. So actually, that's one of the things I love most about Commander is that I have a very vast collection that I've had for 20 plus years, and I can play with almost all of my cards. So It's a really good reason to get into Commander if you are a lapsed player and you're coming back to the game. Okay, so that's what Commander is, right? But the folks watching at home and listening at home, let's tell them why Commander is so great, right? Not just what it is, but why.
Yeah, we've described what it is, but like, why should you care? Why should you play it? It's a social format. It's a time when you can get together with your friends and have a time and play. You have you and 3 other buddies, played Magic in high school, right? And now you're post-college, you're working your job or whatever, and it's like, oh, we could get together and play Magic on Fridays or something, right? Like that's the best part of it, like seeing friends, making new friends and playing with them. Like it's just the best. Like if it weren't the best, I wouldn't have devoted so much of my time and energy to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Commander, like you said, is a social format, and we here at Commander Social like that social aspect, right? And Commander is for everyone. That's kind of the point, is that there's a lot of different ways to play it, and we're going to talk about some of those here. So I did mention this a little bit earlier, but the community for Commander is amazing.
It is.
We're constantly surprised and delighted by this community. Right. It's so welcoming and open. I've seen everybody ask questions on any of the various social medias, and you just really see all this positivity and folks like banding together and sharing and friendship. It's I don't know, it's actually kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, it really is. Like I talk to so many people on Twitter, and some of the people that I've met on Twitter or through other podcasts, I consider to be very good friends now, and I think a community like that is awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. So another thing that makes Commander so amazing is personal expression. And I feel like that's one of the big things that's maybe lacking in like a standard format or something like that, is that, you play the best deck and you're playing to win. Yeah. But in Commander, it's a multiplayer format, right? It's meant to be played with 4 people or more. Yeah. You could play with 3 or 2 even as well. But that multiplayer format lends itself to being able to play a deck. And when you have so many choices with the singleton format like Commander is, you get to personalize your deck and play with your pet cards, and your deck will probably still be pretty good, right? Yeah. And you have I don't know, it just feels so wonderful to be able to make a deck that's uniquely mine, that expresses like who I am and what I like to do.
Right. That's what I love about it too, is the expression. Like when I played Modern, you know, I played Infect, and there are like 3 Infect decks out there, and like there were 2 or 3 card differences between them, and it's the same thing. And you play that one because that's the best one, right? With this, you don't have to play fully optimized cards. You can play cards that are yours, that are your pet cards from back in the day. I play Urtai Wizard Adept. The card's terrible, but I love it, so I play it.
Yeah, and so for example, I have a deck of mine that I like playing with other people's cards.
Oh yeah,
it's one of my favorite things to do in Magic, and I was like, it'd be really hard to do that in a mono red deck. So I'm going to do that.
Do it, yeah.
Right? And I think that's great that I was able to, I made this Grenzo Havoc Razor deck, and it's got like 15 cards that use my opponent's cards, and it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And I love that I got to like make this uniquely mine experience. And then when I play it, it plays differently every game. So there's like a lot of variety and longevity to a deck. When you build a deck, you can play it for a really long time. In fact, a lot of players have like pet decks that are theirs that they've had for a decade or whatever. And they just constantly tune it, and new cards come out and they update it and they bling it out. Commander is also the battle cruiser format of Magic. And by that, what I mean is you can play the biggest, baddest, splashiest cards, right? You can play stuff like Expropriate, which is a 9-mana sorcery, or Clone Legion, right? Parhelion 2, these big, giant cards with splashy effects that just really you can't play in other formats because, they're 20 life formats. They go really quickly, and playing a 9-mana sorcery is kind of hard to do.
You're not going to get there.
Yeah, but in Commander, you really can.
You do, yeah.
And also, because it's multiplayer, the games kind of go a little longer because you're having to react to all the different threats that are being put out there. And so it really does allow you to play these big splashy effects. Now, obviously, you don't want your deck to be full of those, but having a couple in there is real nice.
Yeah, it's always cool to like Riot Replication with Kicker or something. Something crazy. Something I wanted to also mention in this format that we didn't mention before. There's another way to an alternate win condition, sort of, with your commander.
If you deal 21 points of damage with your commander to a single player, that will kill them no matter what their life total is.
Right. And that's an alternate win condition. My decks don't usually use it, but some do. And I think that's a fun way that things can be done. So another thing is your skill in politics can be pretty important. As it can be important as the power level of your deck, even. What you need to know, like who the biggest threat is, and like try to get people on your team to like help deal with like that threat and whatnot. And then you form partnerships that last for X amount of time.
Sometimes they're temporary partnerships for sure.
Yeah, no, I've definitely made Ryan. I'm like, Ryan, we partners? He's like, yeah.
Yeah, for the next 3 turns. Let's do it.
Yeah, and he doesn't say the 3 turns part out loud, and then he like kills me. But no, for real, politics is a really big deal in Magic, because it's like, well, if you are aggressive towards one person, then they may be aggressive back to you, and then the other 2 people like swoop in and do it. But it's also part of the fun too, like thinking through that stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the deal. This is a multiplayer format, and anytime you don't have one single opponent, there is going to be an aspect of politics involved.
Yep.
And it's a big part of Commander, and it's part of what makes it such a fun format, because there are these like dynamic shiftings of power and alliances that are made, and deals that are brokered. And it is just this whole different aspect that if you're new to Commander and you haven't played a multiplayer format before, it's really deep, and you can do so many fun things, and it's just really fun to experience it with other players and to like see like how your different personalities interact with everyone else, right?
Yeah, I mean, the politics is something I wish I'd known when I first started, because when I first started, I'd be like with my cards, land go, and I would just ignore everyone else. But now that I try to get into politics, it's fun, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of the best aspects of Commander, in my opinion,
for sure.
So one other thing that you should know if you're a new player to Commander is that there are varying levels of power in Commander. And Commander is like this wide umbrella that all of the format is under, but there's definitely like a casual spectrum and a competitive spectrum. And you may actually hear things referred to as CEDH, and that C stands for competitive. I should also say you'll hear Commander referred to as EDH, which stands for Elder Dragon Highlander, which was how the format was originally created. It was a grassroots format that was created by Sheldon Menery and some other judges. to be played at after hours at like pro tours and stuff.
Yeah, where they were judging, like they were looking for ways to have fun.
Yeah, and so they kind of dreamed of this format, and now it's an officially supported format by Wizards of the Coast, and I just think that it's really great. So knowing that there is this different like aspects, you can be on the casual side and you can be on the competitive side, and you should know that they both exist, and it's really important to like actually have a talk when you sit down to play a game of Commander, but we're going to reference that a little bit later in the show. But it's just really important to know that there is a way to fit the playstyle of Commander to your group, right? Like some of you out there listening may be super competitive and really want to like go hardcore and like do turn 2 and turn 3 combo wins.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's great. Our format like supports that.
Yeah, for sure. You just want to find other people who want to do that as well, because for some people, you know, like myself, right, I don't want to play that hardcore, right? I just want to like have fun and mess around, and you know that's not fun for me, right? So that's why I try to find groups who play more my speed. So you know, I think you just have to find people of a like mind to play with, and luckily we've had pretty good success with that.
Absolutely, and I'm going to interject a short note here, and that is that you're also playing a multiplayer format, so your expected chances of winning any game of Commander is roughly 25%, all other things being equal if there's 4 players. So, you know, that's way different than if you're used to playing one-on-one Magic.
For sure.
So you need to keep that in mind when you go to play Commander. You want to have fun, and maybe like if you're on the more casual side of things, make sure everyone else is having fun. And just, you know that you won't have that like awesome winning feeling necessarily as much as you might in a one-on-one format, which would be more like 50%, so twice as much. So just keep that in mind. It's still totally worth it. Yeah,
and something to think about too is winning isn't the only way to have fun in EDH.
Absolutely.
Ryan will tell you when I play, I just want to see big things happen, whether I enable those big things to happen or if I try to do something big and someone just stops me stone cold. Like, I think that's awesome, and that's another way to enjoy the game. So speaking of enjoying the game, we're going to go over some tips to get started, right? Everyone's got to start somewhere. You got to have an origin story. So honestly, the best way to start, in my opinion, is to buy a pre-con, especially right now when this airs for the first time. Pre-cons just came out.
The Commander 2019 products just got released, and they're wonderful. They're a really good place to start if you're a new player.
Yeah, like the decks are super balanced with each other. And I know, I'm not sure what other local game stores do, but our local game store, the Mothership.
Shout out to the Mothership.
I was speaking with the owner, and she was talking about how they try to buy enough to keep that in stock all year, because it's something people want constantly, because we're just getting more and more new players. So
Commander is definitely growing. It feels like, and now is a great time to get in on the action.
Yeah, like honestly, just the format feels really good now. You know, the pre-cons are out now, and so those are great. Another thing that I would do is, find out when Commander Night is at your LGS, right? Talk to the person working on the counter and say, let them know, hey, I'm new to playing Commander, and I want to, get some games in and learn. And they can probably help direct you to people who would be more your speed of play at this point. Like, not to say you couldn't get way more competitive later on, but early on, you probably want to play with people who are kind of a little more chill, a little more like us.
Yeah. All right. So Zach, for the folks at watching and listening at home, maybe we could get into a little bit about how to build your first deck.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's definitely a good place to start.
Yeah. I mean, after you've played that pre-con a few times and you get that itch that we all get to build decks.
I get it frequently. Yeah. That's for sure.
We're going to go on that. The first thing you really need to decide is who you want your commander to be. It can be anybody from one of your favorite legendary creatures from back in the day, like Urtai, like I mentioned earlier. Or it could just be a new commander that's a new legendary creature that's come out recently in a new set that, maybe you went to the pre-release and you pulled, maybe you pulled a Villas, or maybe you pulled another Yarok, yeah. And you're like, oh, that seems cool. I want to build around that.
And actually, I'll put a quick plug for edhrec.com here. We are going to talk about it a little bit later in the show as well, but this is the best place to go if you want to find like what the commanders are, right? Because they have it sorted by color.
Yep.
And so you can go like, I want to look at commanders that are blue and green exclusively, and it will show you this nice visual page of like what all the commanders are, and you can read them, and you can go, okay, I want to make this one.
So yeah, that's always the first step, is deciding who your commander is going to be, at least at this point. And once you've decided that commander, what you need to do is decide your plan of attack. How are you going to win? Is it going to be via turning cards sideways and going for people's faces? Are you going to do some sort of like alternate win condition? Are you going to do some sort of convoluted combo like me that never works out? I mean, there's a lot of things. So you need to decide what that plan is. Maybe you just want to play like 100 goblins, right?
You can absolutely do that.
That is a thing that I've seen happen. So what I would do then is just look for cards that synergize with your commander, or just look fun to play with, right? There are sites like Scryfall that you can do very specific searches, very specific. So
you can look for all cards with landfall.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can look for all cards with Death Touch or whatever, and find cards that you like that go with it. And then we mentioned EDH Rec earlier, so if you're having a problem coming with a full 100 cards for your deck, you can do internet research. Just Google search, like if you're going to do Yarok, was it Desecrator or something or another?
Mm-hmm, yep.
And then Commander EDH or something, and you'll see things like articles on a site called MTG Salvation that I look at sometimes. You can also go to EDH Rec and pull up that commander and see what cards are played. They have it broken down pretty well. It's got creatures. It's also got like new cards and like best synergy cards and all that. And then you can also look at sites like Archidect to see decks that have been fully built. But I think the most important part of building a deck is to remember that it is your deck, right? So build it in a way that will be fun for you to play. And something else is also fun for others to play with you, right? That's how you foster community, in my opinion, and at least when you're starting out, Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, putting your personal touches on a deck and your personality into a deck, we referenced that before. That is what makes Commander what it is. And so you should really embrace that part of it and say, like, I want to do all Death Touchers, or I want all things that can only block creatures with flying, whatever you want to do.
Like, I want Ryan's Cat Tribal.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Meow, meow. All right. So earlier I mentioned how amazing the Commander community is, and that's how this next segment came about.
Yep.
This is tips for new players, and we actually solicited feedback both in our Patreon as well as Twitter, and the outpouring from all of you at home was amazing.
Yeah, thank you
so much. Seriously.
Yeah, some of these things I honestly wouldn't have thought of.
So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, this community will just provide that to you if you'll just ask. And we've kind of compiled some tips here for those new players at home. Yeah. So the first one is ramp and card draw are the building blocks of Commander. And I think that more established folks in this format will tell you your deck should have a lot of ramp, it should have a lot of card draw in it. And I'll quickly define like what ramp is here if you're like a super new player. Yeah. A ramp is anything that allows you to have more mana on like a specific turn than you normally should. So for example, Soul Ring, which is a cornerstone of this format, is a single mana artifact, and you can tap it to add 2 mana to your mana pool. So on turn 1, you can lay Soul Ring with your 1 mana and have access to 2 mana when you should only have access to 1. Another example, go ahead.
And then, you can tap that Soul Ring to immediately play an Orzhov Signet, which is another ramper that you pay 1 into it, tap it, and it adds 2 mana. It adds a black and a white mana.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ramp.
Another example is Rampant Growth. Ramp's right there in the name. It's 1 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card and put it into play tapped. So if you cast that on turn 2, you'll end turn 2 with 3 mana in play. If you untap on turn 3 and you lay land, you now have 4 mana on turn 3 when you should only have 3. Yep. That's what ramp is. And there, like you mentioned, there are signets and soul rings. We collectively refer to those as mana rocks.
Yep.
And they're very important, especially if you're not running green in your deck. You want to run like a few mana rocks in your deck, especially when you're getting started. It's not a bad idea to just throw 7 or 8 of them in there.
Yeah.
So ramp is really important to the format. Tell the folks listening about card draw, because that's one of your favorite things to do.
I mean, it is. I love drawing cards. Card draw is just important because I mean, if you're ramping as well, right? You're going to be playing cards out of your hand, and cards in your hand are a resource, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a resource that you want to keep as full as possible because, if your opponent see you down, to like 2 cards or something, they're like, they're going to think that's 5 less answers that this person has, right? So the fuller you can keep your hand, honestly, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about threat assessment. That is one of the ways to assess threat is how many cards does someone have in their hand.
Yeah, and also card draw just lets you see more of your deck, right? So like if you draw more cards throughout the course of a game, you're going to see more of the cards that do the theme for your deck or the cards that synergize with your commander. Yeah. And so that's just a really good way to get your deck like kind of running on all cylinders.
Agreed.
Okay, one thing is with the 40 starting life total, you can usually afford to spend the first couple of turns ramping, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to do in the 60 card formats, but in the early game of Commander, ramping is kind of what happens in the first 2 to 3 turns, right? Like in a standard game. It's not every deck that does that, but you can really afford to because you've got 40 life. You have double the normal starting life total. So even if somebody's doing a super aggressive deck and they're attacking with 2/2 and 3/3 on turn 2, it's less percentage of your life total. So you really kind of can afford to take the time off to ramp to get to those bigger battle cruiser splashier effects sooner.
Something else that I just want to kind of interject there when we talk about the 40 life, just like, your lands and cards in your hand, your life in Commander is a resource.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that like you can spend that resource to do things like, I think one of the biggest ones is card draw, right? So there's a card called Fire Action Arena. It's 1 black. During your upkeep, lose 1 life, draw a card, or something very similar to that. And, you can handle doing that for several turns. And it, you do it for 10 turns and you've lost 10 life.
And you'll be happy to do it almost every time.
Every time. I would never come out. One of my favorite cards is Bitter Blossom. It's 1 on black French. A legendary tribal enchantment, I think, is what it is.
Okay.
And it makes a 1. You lose a life at the beginning of your upkeep, and it creates a 1/1 fairy rogue token, right? That's pretty good too. So that's something to think about with the life is that it is also a resource.
Right. And also I kind of want to touch back on card draw a little bit. So one of the things that's different in a multiplayer format versus a one-on-one format, when you draw a card for your turn, everyone else is going to do that too on their turn, right? So I've drawn 1 card and all 3 of my opponents are also going to draw a card on their turn. Right. So really I'm kind of getting outdrawn 3-1 in a normal game. Like if nobody does anything special, I'm drawing 1 card. Each of my opponents is drawing 1. You can lessen that with politics and like, player B going after player C, right? Like that kind of stuff can happen. But card draw is another way to kind of equalize that balance. Like if you can draw 2 cards a turn, suddenly now you're drawing 2 to everyone else's 3, and it just kind of gets better from there. So card draw really is an important part of Commander, and there's lots of ways to do it over the history of Magic, and a lot of fun ways to do it too.
Yeah, for sure. So Ryan, what's this social contract I keep hearing about?
All right, absolutely. Okay, so we referenced this a little bit earlier in the episode, but the social contract, and you can check it out on mtgcommander.net, and we will put some links here in the show notes as well. But it is the talk, but it's also the way that you build your decks, and it's the way that you present yourself, and it's the way that you play the game. This is different. If you're coming from standard or competitive, sealed, limited, whatever,
you don't care how your opponent feels. You just want to beat them.
Well, yeah, the emphasis is more on the competitive aspect, less on the social aspect.
Correct.
Right. And in Commander, that is flopped. Right. There is competitive play and there is some emphasis on it, but the broader emphasis is on the social play. So basically we've kind of talked about it a bunch all throughout this episode, but really you want to make sure that everybody is sitting down and having a good time. Yep. So the way to do that is to make sure that your decks are roughly even power level. So when you sit down to a game, try to discuss like, hey, what kind of game of Commander are you looking for? Because I talked about it earlier. Commander's a big umbrella. You can fit a whole lot of different types of stuff underneath that umbrella. So really try to find out that you're sitting with like-minded people. Like, hey, does your deck tend to like win on turns 4 and 5? Are you looking for big splashy plays? Have this kind of conversation. Make sure that you are getting the game that you want, and also that the people that you're playing with are getting the game they want.
For sure. So Another important tip for new players is the mana curve. The mana curve matters. Like, it just straight up does with any deck. You know, you want to consider your ramp in there too, but that was something I didn't fully understand. I was like, yeah, 100 card deck, gonna be lots of turns. Let me play huge creatures, and then my mana curve was originally like in my decks were like in the like 6 to 7, like kind of 6 to 7, and then like to 8, and that you don't get to do stuff. I mean, you will eventually, but not if your whole deck's that. So I like to keep my mana curve kind of like 2 up at 3, and like come down a little bit at 4, and then taper down and have some like a few expensive cards to go for when I can do that. And usually those are my win conditions, that kicked Riot replication that I was talking about. But yeah, it matters because in this format, you still want to be able to play things,
Well, yeah, you want to have early interaction.
Yeah, you want to have turn 1 something, turn 2 some, turn 3 something, right? You want to be doing things. You don't want to be just sitting there playing lands and holding cards you can't play. We
referred to it as the battle cruiser format of Magic, but you still have to have those early drops. And you still have to have that early interaction because you want to be playing the game, not just sitting there waiting. So definitely a good point there. Okay, so what else should we talk about? Having a plan for your deck, right? Like that was one of the things that somebody on Twitter mentioned, and that is important, right?
Very important.
And it's actually a lot easier to do, or like at least a lot more self-explanatory in Commander because you have that commander, right? It's sitting in the command zone. It's there. You can play it any turn of the game. You can play it multiple times. It gives you a focal point around your deck. So kind of build cards that synergize with that and have a plan for that card to interact with the rest of your deck and have a plan for your deck and how to win with it, right? And that's harder to do. It's probably a whole episode we could go into, but it's just something to be thinking about when you're building your deck. Like, is this fitting into the plan of my deck? Am I trying to ramp out and get big, huge, giant monsters on the field? Or am I trying to like play a whole bunch of enchantments and then animate them and attack with them? You can really do anything. So I think it's just important to have a plan.
Plans are good, I hear. So the next thing is you want to do threat assessment, right? You've got to decide who's the biggest threat, who's gonna mess you up the most, or who could possibly mess up the whole table. And threat assessment is something hard to do. Like part of it, it's how many lands does everyone have? How many cards are in their hand?
What's their life total?
Yeah, what's their life total? I mean, those are basic Magic things too, but also
what do they have in play?
Yeah,
what does that do?
Yeah, exactly. Like what all is going on there, and you want to find a way to kind of deal with these problems. But sometimes if you're the person who always deals with the problems, that starts to draw hate on you, right? And that you don't want that because you want to theoretically win this game. So something I said on Twitter this week, and that was, the best removal is someone else's removal.
Yeah, that's true.
So like sometimes I'll have removal in my hand and I'll feign like I don't, and I'll try to get like someone else to use their removal.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely fits more into the politics side of things, but for sure, yeah. And I guess I would say that being able to correctly identify the threat means you can kind of like form the alliances with the right people and kind of shift that balance of power and like kind of self-correct a little bit. So like if somebody gets off to a really early lead, that person may be the threat, and then the other 3 players can kind of band together and it becomes a game of arch enemy for a little while until that player's kind of like got a bunch of their stuff destroyed. And so there is this like shifting back and forth, and being able to correctly identify threats is a really hard thing to do, and it's a skill that gets built over time, and it's something we could definitely go into for probably multiple episodes if we really wanted to. But it's just something to be aware of when you're starting out in Commander. Another important consideration in Commander is your mana base. And this is something that varies wildly. If you're playing a monocolored deck, it's pretty easy. If you're playing a 5-color deck, it's pretty difficult. And you really want to make sure that your mana base is solid. I think that, if you're coming over from a 60-card format, you probably already know this, but it is something really important to think about. And you really want to have a decent land count. I think probably the starting place for a 100-card deck is around 35 to 38 is about the right starting range. And there's, we have all the cards from all the history of Magic. Right. So you can really build a crazy mana base if you really want to.
Yeah, and something that you can do to, and honestly, I play 38 lands in almost all of my decks just because I want those lands. But there's a website called manabasecrafter.com where you can type in your commander's name and then it will list every possible land that you could play, everything from OG duels to time shifted blue and black card that doesn't make sense to shocks.
It's a River of Tears, I think.
I think so. Yeah. But anyway, this thing just lists all, and you can look and see what you want. And I think you can look at the prices and find out what's best, because a lot of mistakes I think people make with their mana bases is there are a lot of dual lands that come into play tapped, and those slow you down.
Yeah, you take a tempo hit by running those, but sometimes it's the right call. And especially if you're on the super casual side of things, it could probably be okay.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think you want to balance how many of those you run versus how many you don't run that come into play tapped. I mean, even if you're talking more basic lands than specials, I think that's good. The next thing, and this is advice I need to take myself probably, but it's settle on a list before buying singles. The format's not the cheapest format. It's not. But if you
budget decks are certainly viable.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's a power level thing, right? If you're all playing, you and all your friends are playing with $50 decks, have at it. That's gonna be pretty fair. But if you're playing a $50 deck and Ryan's playing a $1,500 deck, gets a little dicey.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of a power imbalance there sometimes, but the point is, the format is viable, right?
Oh, it is
especially
for sure.
These pre-con decks that have just come out. You can sit down at a table with strangers and play those decks and have fun, and the mana bases in those are pretty good too. Yeah, so they're a good thing to look at.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's what you want to do is you don't want to end up buying singles that you don't need. I definitely will be oh, I have 150 cards to build this deck, and let me just go ahead and buy all of them, and I'll figure out when they get here, because I'm better at building decks, with the cards in front of me, right? But that's not a great habit. I'd probably lose some money to that.
Yeah, and if you can build it on Archidekt or Tapped Out, or even Scryfall's new deck builder.
Oh yeah. Scryfall deck builder.
You build it virtually first and take it for a spin, draw a couple sample hands, see if it does what you think it's going to do, and then buy the singles. I'm definitely guilty of this. I'm definitely oh well, here's the 100 cards I could possibly want for this deck, and then I buy them all, and then I only use half of them.
Right. And Archidekt has a thing where you can kind of play test your deck a little bit. So I think that's pretty cool.
So one of the next suggestions from our amazing community was know about the stack. And I'm just going to hit it real quick here.
Yep.
Once again, this is a pretty complex topic, so we don't have time to go into the whole thing here. But basically, things go onto the stack and they resolve in reverse order. So the first thing that happens, if somebody responds to it, the response card happens first, and then the original card. So they
first
kind of
in, last out.
Yeah, first in, last out. They just kind of get layered on top of each other. And then when nobody else has anything to do, the last spell played or the last ability played resolves. And it kind of works its way back down the stack. And that's how counter spells work. Yeah. And it's basically a really big, huge fundamental part of the game. And it's something that you should know pretty well. And I guess my advice for new players out there would be go check out MTG Arena. You can check out the stack and see how things work on that. And it's free to play. And it's a really great way to get into the rules of Magic. Now, you can't play Commander on there. You will be able to play Brawl on there by the end of the year, but it's still a good way to learn how to play Magic and how the stack works and stuff like that.
Yeah, and while we're speaking about the stack and Arena, one of our other listeners wanted to talk about priority, because they say it took them a while to learn how priority works. And so Arena helps you with that too. I'm going to do a real basic priority thing, but so it becomes, it's my turn. It's my first main phase. I get priority. I do something, and then Ryan gets priority. Ryan chooses to do something or he doesn't. So we'll say he doesn't, and then I choose not to do something. So there's been 2 clean priority passes. So what I tried to do happens, right? And this is with counterspells too. I'll play something. Ryan to get priority. Ryan places counter spell. I don't have anything else, so I pass priority. Ryan didn't have anything else. He passes priority. The counter spell resolves, and then my card goes away.
Yeah,
so,
a quick way to say this is that like maybe there's a whole bunch of things on the stack.
Yeah.
The top thing of the stack only resolves once every player in a multiplayer game of Commander that's usually 4, once all of them have passed priority. Right. So everybody gets a chance to do an action at all of the different spots.
Right.
And it really, like, we shortcut that a lot anytime you play Magic, not just in Commander.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that you should know exists. And once you get that down, a lot of things start making a whole bunch more sense. It's kind of like the first domino that falls into place and then knocks down a whole bunch of learning, as you go along.
Yeah, like it's really important to know to become better. But yeah, it's definitely something that you can look up.
All right, so our next tip for newer players to the Commander format is play artifact and enchantment removal.
Yep.
Those are the cards that really get a lot of work done in Commander games. Sure. And you really want to have answers to them if you can. Obviously, you're not going to play like 60 artifact and enchantment removal spells, but having a good 6 to 7 in your deck is not a bad idea.
It's true, especially, and the cool thing about those is they overlap a lot too. Like
Disenchant for 1 and a white. It destroys target artifact or enchantment.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say Return to Dust, but yep, that too. Something else to think about: board wipes are important. Sometimes you're gonna have to wipe your own board. It's not fun, but when you got a million other creatures staring you down, you need a board wipe. But just as important is single target removal. Maybe you've got a pretty decent board state and one player has something real messed up. I want to say Grizzlebrand, but you can't have Grizzlebrand.
How about a really big Forgotten Ancient?
Yeah, a really big Forgotten Ancient. You're like, oh, let me go ahead and Hero's Downfall that.
So here's the thing. I noticed this mistake from a lot of new players to Commander, and so I'll kind of go just like slightly deep here, which is they just go, oh, well, I'm just going to only run board wipes because I'm playing multiplayer, and so rather than just killing one creature, I want to kill all of the creatures. And that is true to some extent. However, if you're in that board state where there's a really big Forgotten Ancient that's coming, or that's like got 20 counters on it or whatever, right? Maybe they attack somebody else with it. And so if you have because usually mass removal is at sorcery speed and usually single target removal is at instant speed. And so if you've got that Swords to Plowshares, you can wait. And if they don't attack you, then you don't have to spend your removal and somebody else probably has to deal with it or they take damage. Yep. So single target removal is important, but so is mass removal, right? So are board wipes, but you really kind of want to have both in your deck.
And I think single target removal is kind of a politic thing too, because what if that real big angel is coming at you, and I'm like, Ryan, don't mess me up, and I'll destroy that thing. Yeah,
you can absolutely use single target removal to like curry favor.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've done it. I do it.
All right. Okay. So another thing here, and this is a really important one, and I see this happen a lot of times with new players. Read the cards.
Sure.
I'm going to say it again. Read the cards.
Yours and theirs.
Absolutely. I see this all the time. We've taught a lot of new players to play Commander, and a lot of people are kind of like hesitant because they don't want to like slow down the flow of the game to like pick up and read a card. But honestly, you really need to do that.
Yep.
You really need to understand what the cards are and what they're doing. Don't just have somebody tell you, oh, this kills your creature. Take the card and read it. It doesn't take that long, and you're going to start absorbing that knowledge. You're going to get it into your muscle memory, and then they will play Hero's Downfall, and you'll know exactly what it does.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to do that. And I really, really want to like hit this point home because I've seen it a lot in newer players. They just don't want to like take the focus of on themselves. But I have been playing Commander like nearly since its inception, and I read cards every game, right? And you should not be afraid to do it. It's how you're going to get better. It's how you're going to increase your understanding and your knowledge. And at the end of the day, I've never had somebody pick up one of my cards and read it. And like, I've never been like, man, why are they reading my card? That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's true. Like I always like sit down and say, when we start to play, I'm like, look, if you need to read a card, let me know, take it. It's fine. I want people to know what's going on. And, I definitely always ask before I read someone's card. But the thing is like, I mean, we've been playing since 1994, right? And Magic has been around since 1993?
Yep.
There's a bajillion cards out there. It's impossible to know what they all do. it's impossible for me to know just what the cards in the most recent set do, right? So there's no shame in reading cards. In fact, I think more highly of you if you're trying to study the board state, right? It's
absolutely
it's how you play, it's how you get better.
Right. And actually, speaking of, there are a lot of cards in Magic. And I think that's one of the things that's maybe a little daunting about Commander is that you're like, oh man, there's like 20,000 cards and I need to know what they all do. You don't. Right. That's why you read cards during games. And actually, that's actually one of the fun parts about Commander is that when you're building a new deck, you discover cards that you never knew existed.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's just this wealth of like hidden treasure that you kind of get to sift through. So I tend to think of that big giant card pool as like one of the strengths of Commander because there is so much to explore and I really enjoy the exploration part of it. Yeah. And so when you get like, when you sit down, you're like, oh man, how do I even start? We have wonderful resources and we're going to talk about them here in a little bit, but don't be afraid. Just kind of get in there and find some cards and play with them. And as time goes on and as you play more, you'll know expand your knowledge. And I mean, even to this day, I listen to a bunch of podcasts and I watch a bunch of stuff and people talk about cards. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. Yeah. And I've been playing for a long time. So I just think it's one of the strengths of the format and I know it's scary, but it's worth it.
Right. And, you know, we're kind of wrapping up here. We've definitely talked about, you know, very high level, how to get started, what to do when you're new to Commander, you know. So if this has piqued your interest and you're like, oh, this sounds like something I want to get into, there are so many resources on the internet. You can go to edhrec.com, and these will be in the show notes. You can go to mtgcommander.net. That's the Commander webpage. If you go to mtgcommander.net/rules.php, it'll give you some stuff. You want to pay attention to the philosophy of Commander and social contract. Yeah,
when you're visiting that page, definitely read the philosophy of Commander. It's pretty short and it'll give you a feel for the format, especially if you're new.
Yep. And there's definitely podcasts, you know, like ours. Command Zone is very good. You know, and like our episodes, if you watch the episodes, they show cards and they talk about them and it's pretty good. Commanderin is also good. Commander's Brew is a great resource because they brew budget decks every episode, you know, and they talk about new commanders. And I think, you know, you can get a lot from that. Commander Central, CMDR Central, they're good too. They
make very accessible content that you can easily consume, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, they definitely, and they're doing 2 episodes a week right now.
They do a Decks You Play series. Yeah. So if you want to like see like what it looks like to have somebody break down a current deck and like how to improve it, that's definitely something we're checking out.
Yeah.
If you're more on the YouTube side of things, we can recommend some stuff there.
Yeah.
Game Nights, which is made by Jimmy and Josh of Command Zone.
Yeah.
Their whole team is making these awesome videos. They come out once a month. And I really recommend going back and watching like all of those because you can get a feel for the Commander format and how it plays. And you can see like the interplay and the politics, and it's so well produced. Like you should absolutely check it out. It's totally worth it. Another one is DJ over at Jumbo Commander. Yep. He makes awesome videos, a lot of deck techs, a lot of other stuff too. He recently made one about a Vorthos deck about Buffy that was great.
Oh yeah.
So definitely check out his stuff. There's also Commander Quarters, which brews very budget decks. I think they end up at like $25 a piece. So if you're looking to just kind of dip your toe into Commander, that's a great place to start.
There's another YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Commander Social. They put up we put up some videos there. You know, you can our podcast and videos are geared a little bit more towards the newer players. So there's definitely a lot you can get from us too.
Absolutely.
Full self-plug.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. And also if you just want to like check out a great search engine, Scryfall has you covered.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. And those are like some of the best tools to get you started down this wonderful journey that you're hopefully about to embark on or have just recently embarked on.
Yep. So in summary, we just want to say Commander's great. Welcome to the format.
Absolutely.
And now is one of the best times to get in because the Commander 2019 decks just came out. They should be in your local game stores.
And here's the thing. I cannot stress how wonderful this community is.
Yeah.
Like, you really want to be a part of it. You want to get a deck and join in and just come have fun with us. It's one of the best things to do, and you're going to meet so many wonderful people. I just can't stress it enough. Like, it's so much fun. It's one of the things I look forward to every week.
Yep.
Like we said earlier, right? It's a format that's social, right? Commander is social.
Yep.
And it's great. It's a way to meet people and just have a lot of fun. So, I want to say, if you're out there and you're new to Commander and you're watching this video or listening to this podcast, hit us up on Twitter. I know some people are like maybe hesitant to do that at the start of things. Please do.
Yeah, for sure.
We really want to help usher in new folks into this format.
Absolutely.
We love this community. We want to see it grow and get bigger and stronger. And that's why we made this episode particularly. So if you're watching this and you're new and you have any questions, please don't be hesitant to reach out to us.
And any of our Twitter, they can hit you up at
Green Geek on Twitter.
And you can hit me up at Z4CK38 on Twitter. You can tweet at me, or I think I have my DMs open. So if you want to just DM me, go ahead and do that. Or if you want to get both of us, we're at Commander Social.
Special thanks to our super patrons. You can check us out at patreon.com/commandersocial and join at the Your Name in Lights tier if you want to be here as well.
So, that's pretty much it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and until next week, this is Zach and Ryan saying,
Keep it social.